There are soldiers who serve without question, warriors who bind their sparks so tightly to a banner that the line between self and symbol dissolves. Breakdown was such a soldier, Decepticon through and through, loyal to Megatron with the fervor of the true believer. But loyalty, when given to a rotting cause, becomes a toxin that corrodes from within. This is the story of how unwavering devotion became a descent into madness, and how the Decepticon machine devoured one of its most dedicated sons. Loyalty's lure. In the beginning, Breakdown embodied everything the Decepticon cause claimed to value. Strength, courage, unshakable resolve. On the war-torn surface of Cybertron, he fought alongside Knockout, his partner, his closest companion in an army that valued power over friendship. Where others wavered, Breakdown stood firm. Where others questioned, he obeyed. Megatron's vision of a new Cybertron, purged of weakness and ruled by strength, resonated in Breakdown's spark like a battle hymn. He was no blind fool. Breakdown possessed intelligence, tactical acumen, and formidable combat prowess. His transformation into a heavily armored truck reflected his philosophy: endurance, reliability, the capacity to weather any storm. He upgraded his frame specifically to match the Autobot bruiser bulkhead in combat, demonstrating the kind of dedicated self-improvement that Megatron claimed to admire. This was a warrior who believed, truly believed, that the Decepticon path would lead to a better world, that the violence was necessary, the sacrifices justified, the cruelty temporary. But belief, however genuine, cannot alter reality. And the reality of Decepticon loyalty is this: it is a one-way contract, written in Energon and signed in servitude. Megatron demands absolute dedication, but offers nothing in return, save the hollow promise of eventual victory. There is no safety net for those who falter, no compassion for those who fall. The Decepticon hierarchy is a pyramid of paranoia, where every soldier stands on the shoulders of those they've betrayed, knowing their own footing is equally precarious. Breakdown did not see this, not yet. He saw only the cause, the mission, the brotherhood he believed existed among warriors fighting for a shared dream. This blindness would be his undoing. The cracks begin. Seeds of doubt. Breakdown's devotion to Megatron and the Decepticon cause was forged through battle and hardship. But loyalty, in truth, was a weapon pointed back at the loyal. The deeper Breakdown went, the sharper the edge became. His faith slowly turned from shield to shiv. The first fractures appeared not among Autobots, but within the ranks Breakdown called his own. He saw Megatron's disregard for his soldiers, witnessed in every discarded comrade, every reckless order that spent troops like cheap ammunition. When Breakdown lost his optic to the human organization MECH, he returned not to comfort, but to indifference. Megatron's care was nothing more than contemptuous surprise when learning of Breakdown's demise. By another's hand, a leader who called his warriors expendable, no matter their loyalty or sacrifice. The cruelty of the Decepticon war effort became impossible to ignore. Missions grew more brutal, destroying settlements, eliminating innocent bystanders in the search for Energon, executing prisoners without so much as a glimmer of regret. Breakdown, bound by loyalty, participated in these operations, justifying the violence as necessary for victory. With every act, his spark grew heavier. The line between soldier and monster blurred until it vanished altogether. But it was the absence of camaraderie that truly set Breakdown adrift. The Decepticon ranks were not a brotherhood, but an assemblage of predators united by fear, ambition, or convenience. Knockout, wry, self-serving, and uniquely skilled remained his only friend in a world of rivals and opportunists. Among others, Breakdown was a tool, a liability if broken. The message was clear. In the Decepticon camp, you stand alone, and to show weakness is to invite oblivion. The psychological toll mounted. Breakdown began to question not outwardly, never to Megatron's face, but deep within the labyrinth of his own mind. Why did he serve a master who cared nothing for his well-being? Why carry out orders that violated everything he once believed about the nobility of their cause? The more he reflected, the more his world destabilized. The certainty that once fueled his every action now bred an insidious anxiety. If loyalty meant nothing, if service only led to abandonment, what was left to guide him? The Decepticon symbol, once a badge of pride, became a mark of isolation. Breakdown's optics, initially clear with devotion, now flickered, nervously haunted by the guilt of his deeds and suspicion that no amount of service could ever win true belonging or meaning in a structure built on betrayal and fear. Descent into madness. The breaking point. The human organization known as MECH did something that no Autobot ever could. They broke Breakdown in ways that transcended the physical. When he awoke, strapped to their dissection table, his defiance meant nothing. They disabled his pain receptors and began methodically disassembling him piece by piece, circuit by circuit, extracting his technology with clinical precision. They removed his right optic, studying the mechanisms of Cybertronian vision, as if he were nothing more than a fascinating machine to be understood and replicated. This was not combat. This was not honorable defeat. This was violation, the reduction of a sentient being to raw material. His consciousness screaming silently as his body was harvested like ore from a mine. When rescue finally came, it was not from the Decepticons he served with such unwavering loyalty. Megatron, informed of Breakdown's capture, dismissed the matter entirely. One soldier was not worth the risk of engaging human forces. The message was clear and brutal. Breakdown was expendable. It was Bulkhead, his Autobot rival, who came for him. Not out of compassion, but out of a twisted sense of honor. If anyone was going to destroy Breakdown, it would be Bulkhead himself, not some human scavengers. The irony cut deeper than any surgical laser. An enemy cared more about Breakdown's fate than his own commander. The psychological wound inflicted in those moments would never heal. After his rescue, Breakdown returned to the Nemesis altered. The missing optic was a constant, visible reminder of his trauma, but the true damage was invisible, carved into his psyche. Paranoia began to fester. Every shadow held a threat. Every glance from a fellow Decepticon felt like surveillance, judgment, the prelude to betrayal. The confidence that once defined him eroded, replaced by a jittery hypervigilance that made him dangerous in unpredictable ways. His remaining optic began to flicker erratically, a physical manifestation of internal chaos. Where once he saw clear lines between ally and enemy, mission and massacre, now everything blurred. Hallucinations crept in during quiet moments, echoes of MECH, technicians' voices, phantom sensations of being restrained, visions of his own disassembled parts scattered across laboratory floors. The torture had rewired something fundamental in his processor, creating feedback loops of terror that no amount of field repair could fix. Knockout noticed the change, tried in his own superficial way to reach his friend, but the Decepticon ranks offered no infrastructure for mental health, no protocol for psychological wounds. Weakness was death. Vulnerability was invitation for rivals to strike. Breakdown learned to hide his deterioration, to mask the growing instability behind forced bravado and aggressive action. But the mask was cracking, and everyone could see the fissures spreading. The physical toll mirrored the mental collapse. Breakdown's frame, once meticulously maintained, began to show signs of stress, corrosion, microfractures, in armor plating, lubricant leaks, servo joints that ground and caught. His transformation sequence, previously smooth and practiced, became hesitant, sometimes incomplete, as if his body itself was questioning its own identity. The machine was breaking down, in sympathy with the mind that piloted it, and there was no escape. To defect meant death. The Decepticons eliminated traitors with extreme prejudice. To remain meant continued service to a cause that had revealed itself as hollow. A commander who viewed him as disposable equipment. Breakdown was trapped in a cage of his own loyalty, watching the bars contract while his sanity hemorrhaged through the gaps. The realization settled over him like cold vacuum. He had sacrificed everything for the Decepticon, caused his peace of mind, his physical integrity, his sense of self, and received nothing in return except trauma and abandonment. The cognitive dissonance was unbearable. How could he have been so wrong? How could devotion lead to this? The questions spiraled endlessly, unanswered and unanswerable, grinding his consciousness against itself like tectonic plates in slow, agonizing collision. In his final days, those who fought alongside him noticed the change. Breakdown had become something desperate and volatile. A warrior who took unnecessary risks, who fought with a recklessness that bordered on suicidal, as if seeking an honorable death to escape the dishonor of his continued existence. The spark that once burned with dedication now flickered with something darker. The ember of a soul that had glimpsed the meaninglessness of its sacrifice and could not look away. The Decepticon cause had taken a loyal soldier and, through indifference and cruelty, forged him into a cautionary tale written in corroding metal and fractured code, proof that loyalty without reciprocation is not virtue, but self-destruction. The tragic aftermath. A cautionary tale. Breakdown's end came not at the hands of an Autobot, not through honorable combat, but through betrayal, the inevitable conclusion of a life spent serving those who valued loyalty without offering it in return. Arachnid, the treacherous Decepticon hunter, dismembered him in cold calculation, viewing his parts as resources to be harvested, rather than recognizing the warrior he had been. There was no glory in this death, no meaning, no acknowledgement of his years of service. He was simply disassembled, his frame scattered, his spark extinguished like a faulty bulb replaced without ceremony. The irony cuts deepest in what happened next. Mech, the organization that had tortured him, that had awakened the paranoia and trauma that hastened his psychological collapse, recovered his remains. His body became a vessel for Silas, the human who had orchestrated his vivisection, who now wore Breakdown's frame like stolen armor. The warrior who had sacrificed everything for Decepticon loyalty became a puppet for human ambition, his corpse paraded in service of the very enemies he had fought against. Even in death, Breakdown could not escape violation. Knockout's response revealed the hollowness at the Decepticon heart. The medic mourned. Yes, but his grief was personal, selfish, focused on his own loss rather than the systemic failure that had killed his friend. When Knockout eventually defected to the Autobots, it was not because he had learned from Breakdown's fate, not out of moral awakening or recognition that the Decepticon cause was fundamentally rotten. He simply chose self-preservation, joining the winning side to save his own plating. Breakdown's death taught him nothing except to abandon ship before it fully sank. This is the brutal truth about Decepticon loyalty. It is a transaction that only flows one direction. Megatron demands everything: absolute obedience, willingness to die, sacrifice of conscience and sanity, while offering nothing in return except the privilege of continued service until death or disposal. Breakdown gave years of his existence, upgraded his frame for better combat effectiveness, endured torture, psychological trauma, and the slow erosion of his sanity. His reward was to be killed by a fellow Decepticon and have his corpse desecrated by enemies, while his commander remained indifferent to both violations. Compare Breakdown's fate to other loyalists who faced similar pressures. Dreadwing, another Decepticon who valued honor, was executed by Megatron himself when his principles conflicted with expediency. Both warriors shared the fatal flaw of believing that their loyalty would be reciprocated, that service would be honored, that the cause they fought for possessed some fundamental nobility worth preserving. Both learned, too late, that the Decepticon hierarchy is built on exploitation, that honor among tyrants is performance art at best and suicide at worst. Yet Breakdown's case is particularly poignant because his dedication was so complete, his transformation from confident warrior to paranoid wreck so thoroughly documented. We watched him break in real time, saw the exact moments when doubt crept in, witnessed the specific betrayals that eroded his foundation, observed the precise instant when his psyche fractured beyond repair. His madness was not sudden or mysterious. It was the inevitable outcome of a system designed to consume its adherents. The cost to the Decepticon cause is rarely examined but profoundly significant. Every warrior, like Breakdown, who descends into madness or betrayal, represents a failure of the ideology itself. A movement that cannot sustain the loyalty it demands, that drives its most dedicated soldiers to psychological collapse, is inherently unsustainable. The Decepticons win battles but lose wars because their internal structure is cannibalistic, consuming talent, dedication, and potential in service of a leader who views his followers as ammunition to be expended. Breakdown's legacy is written in warning. This is what happens when you give everything to a cause that sees you as nothing. This is the price of loyalty without reciprocation, service without honor, devotion without meaning. His shattered frame, his violated corpse, his extinguished spark. These are not tragic accidents, but predictable outcomes of a fundamentally corrupt system. Every Decepticon who witnessed his fate learned a lesson, whether they acknowledged it or not. Loyalty is a weapon the powerful use against the devoted, and madness is just the mind's way of trying to escape a cage built from your own convictions. Beyond the battlefield, the modern resonance, Breakdown's story is not confined to Cybertron. It echoes across every battlefield where loyalty is weaponized. Every ideology that demands sacrifice without offering meaning. Every system that consumes its adherents in service of leaders who view them as expendable. Strip away the alien armor and transformation cogs, and what remains is a painfully human tale. The cost of unquestioning obedience to a flawed cause. History is littered with Breakdown soldiers who believed in missions that betrayed them, followers who dedicated their lives to movements that viewed them as statistics, true believers who discovered too late that their devotion was currency spent on lies. The psychological mechanisms are identical. Cognitive dissonance, when reality contradicts ideology. The sunk cost fallacy that makes abandoning a cause feel like admitting your sacrifices were meaningless. The isolation that comes from questioning what everyone around you accepts without hesitation. In today's polarized world, where ideological tribes demand total allegiance and dissent is treated as betrayal, Breakdown's madness feels uncomfortably relevant. Political movements, corporate cultures, social media echo chambers, all can create environments where critical thinking is discouraged, where loyalty is measured by willingness to ignore contradictions, where psychological safety is sacrificed for conformity. The mechanisms that broke Breakdown operate at human scale every day. The normalization of cruelty, the isolation of those who question, the absence of exit strategies for those who realize they've committed to something rotten. The importance of critical thinking cannot be overstated. Breakdown's tragedy was not that he chose loyalty, but that he chose it blindly, maintaining devotion even as evidence mounted that the Decepticon cause was fundamentally corrupt. He ignored warning signs, rationalized atrocities, and suppressed doubt until his psyche shattered under the weight of contradictions it could no longer contain. True virtue requires the courage to question, to reevaluate, to change course when new information reveals that the path you're on leads to destruction both of others and yourself. This is not a call to abandon all loyalty or commitment. It is a recognition that loyalty must be earned and continually re-earned. That devotion to people or causes should be conditional on their worthiness, that blind obedience is not a virtue, but a vulnerability that predators exploit. Breakdown's fate teaches us that the capacity to leave, to defect, to dissent, to walk away from toxic systems is not weakness, but wisdom. Not betrayal, but self-preservation and moral clarity. The final question haunts like a ghost in corroded circuits. Is loyalty truly a virtue when it leads to madness? Or does virtue require something more discernment? Boundaries. The willingness to recognize when a cause has revealed itself as unworthy of continued service. Breakdown gave everything and received nothing. His spark was extinguished, not in heroic sacrifice, but in meaningless violence. His body desecrated, his loyalty unrequited and unremembered. Perhaps the truest loyalty is not to flags or factions, not to leaders or ideologies, but to truth itself, even when that truth reveals that everything you fought for was a lie. Perhaps courage is not staying the course, when staying means destruction, but having the strength to change course when wisdom demands it. Perhaps the real madness is not in breaking down under impossible pressure, but in continuing to serve systems that grind their servants into scrap metal and call it honor.